Good morning, everybody. It is time to get your horns up. The show with me, Travis Gailey, Orange Blood's own Aaron Little, and Nash from Texas, who loves talking all things UT. It is UTOU week. We have got just 5 days and a wake up left until the big game in Dallas. Cannot wait for it. We'll get to that coming up. We got to talk Kansas first, but first, Aaron, Nash, how you guys doing today?
I'm doing so good. Like it's this. I care about sports way too much, and this was possibly like the greatest sports weekend, like consistency wise. Like besides like titles, that like the Warriors have won, but like the Chargers don't win on weekends that Texas also wins. So Texas wins, the Chargers win, the Diamondbacks clinch the playoffs for the first time since 2017. I'm on top of the world. Like you can't bring me down. You can't do it.
Love it, Nash.
Yeah, I mean, hey, what a life it is for Aaron right now. He's just like you're talking about a guy that just a couple days we're talking about how he grew up on Sports Center and that's all he grew up on. Man, this has got to be like the apex of your sports consumption life.
We're living, man. I mean,
love it.
It's unreal.
You know what? It is time. It's OU week, just like Benny Rogers saying it's that week. Good morning, Benny. But you know what? You are not the first in the house. And to show you what kind of week this is, the first one in the Specs chat line this morning, a Sooner, Kay Bradbury, sneaking in and getting the W. The college football world is about to see what Brent Venables is building at Oklahoma. The defense is legit, and his recruiting classes are elite. All right, Kay Bradbury, love having you on the show.
Hey, the first sentence is very accurate. They're about to find out.
I am happy to have everyone joining the show, even Sooners. But you got to see the name of the show and know that Charles is right. It's time to get your horns up. Good morning, Charles. Good morning to Texas Mama, a regular in here. And yeah, she agrees with Benny. It is that week. Scott Bowers says it's 7:30 a.m. You know the rest of that.
Yeah.
Ashbrook wanting to beat OU by 50. And Dustin Jones saying, hey, it's 6:31. And Dustin, it's time to get your horns up. That's what that means. Britt Barry is already guessing the score. Britt, wait till Thursday's show, but he's already guessed.
I'm glad he pointed that out. I was scrolling through. He was so close. I noticed. I was like, oh, Brent, you had it.
Yeah, that was the score of the Kansas game, which, we've got to get to that Kansas game, by the way. Yeah, it was. First off, before we do that, 2 quick notes. All right, Jeff Ketchum reported in his 10 thoughts from the weekend on Orange Bloods, which, again, if you haven't subscribed by now, what are you waiting for? It's full of good notes like this. Jatavian Sanders is, according to the sources he is hearing within UT, is about a 40-60 to play. So not quite 50-50. Dealing with that, I'm going to assume ankle injury. That's what it looked like. All they're saying is lower body injury. But there's no word on Ryan Watts. So Texas could be down at star tight end. Texas for OU. Texas could be down its best DB cornerback for OU. So we'll see. We should get more on that throughout the week. But Texas 40, Kansas 14. Hey Nash, who is the star of this week's show?
I believe this is quite an easy answer. Jonathan Brooks. I've been pounding this drum for a long time.
JB was definitely the star of the show. 218 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. Guys, he loves playing Kansas. He had over 100 last year against KU. 218 this year. And the thing that has really stuck out to me is, we came into the season with Sark saying CJ Baxter was going to be the starter. And then, of course, he got injured, which is a shame for CJ Baxter. I think he will still be needed as this year progresses. But look at the progression of Jonathan Brooks's yards each week. It was like 52 against Rice, 57 against Bama, 164 against Wyoming, only 108 against Baylor, but he didn't play the full game. He wasn't needed because it was such a blowout. And then 218 against Kansas. So there's been a very clear progression of him. Each week, Jonathan Brooks getting better and better and better and better and proving more and more that he deserves to be on the field and deserves to continue to get carries. Nash, I know you tweeted over the weekend about comparing Jonathan Brooks to Roschon Johnson and Bijan Robinson, which I know some will say is heresy, but it's not all that crazy, is it?
No, it's not. This is something that I said that multiple times. Hey, we have these stats that exist, but it's all garbage time. So, who knows what it can end up being. And the reality is during the game and when the meaningful carries count, it's the same exact stuff, possibly even better than what it was in that small limited sample size for Jonathan Brooks in the previous series.
Yeah, he's still getting yards at elite level of yards after contact, elite level of missed forces per attempt, missed tackles forced per attempt. He's breaking off explosive plays left and right. Aaron, give me your reaction to Jonathan Brooks this week.
Yeah, I just see a guy that's running with so much confidence. Watching that Kansas game, it was just he just got no hesitation when he's hit the hole. He's seeing the field so well. Like we talk about that for a quarterback a lot of the time. Like they're dropping back, they're going through their progressions. Oh, they're seeing the field really well. Jonathan Brooks is seeing the field really well. Every single carry, he is hitting the hole. The offensive line had a really good day in the run game. They were giving him holes, but it's not to take anything away from Jonathan Brooks because he was hitting the holes and he was hitting them every time and he was doing it aggressively. And I just see a guy that's running with a ton of confidence. I see a guy that is hard to bring down. Like you're not bringing him down with an ankle tackle. You're not bringing him down with just like a flimsy arm tackle. Like you really got to wrap him up and bring him down. So, he's got a lot of confidence. He's seeing the field so well. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun to watch and it's been a huge development for this team.
And when you filter in the last 3 weeks, he's the number one running back tied with Ray Davis out of Kentucky, who just had an amazing. Honestly, but at the end of the day, this is where I think Jonathan Brooks is probably a little bit more. It's going to show the consistency. You're going to see more consistency from him because it looked like Florida had absolutely zero interest in tackling. I'd love to see what Jonathan Brooks would do against Florida. That'd be a fun game to watch. But and then you also got Estime at Notre Dame with 1 yard behind. But Jonathan Brooks is just like on absolute tear. And like you said, but this is also the thing that he never had the thing with Jonathan Brooks was never, oh, he's got this elite jump cut. He's got these amazing hands. What he has is he's got I was talking with my dad the other night. It's like the it factor with like you said it best. It's like it factor with quarterbacks. You don't you can't name it, but you know it when you see it.
Absolutely.
Well, that's what Jonathan Brooks has, but it's more of an intangible when you're talking about the vision. That's just it's one of those traits that you either got it or you don't.
Yep. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Just a ton of confidence. That's really what it comes down to for me, I think. But yeah, it's been fun to watch.
And then also, I was just going to say that through the first games, it's 86 attempts, 597 yards. Bijan, 88 attempts, 515 yards.
And damn, that's impressive. That is impressive. And Aaron hit on this, but I think it's worth really pointing out. The offensive line does deserve a lot of credit for that. Some of those runs he wasn't even touched. But here's the critical part of that. It's not just that the offensive line did well opening up the run game. It was the interior of the offensive line. They ran up the middle. And we harped on all preseason that the interior was going to be that was one of the biggest question marks. Could the interior of the offensive line play up to the level of Kelvin Banks and Christian Jones out wide? There were no question marks about them. It was the 2 guards in the center. Well, they came to play this week against Kansas. They were moving bodies inside, and they were running. Texas was running up the middle easily. And I think this has to be DJ Campbell's best game. That dude was moving bodies around big time. So that's got to bode well for their confidence going into OU, which, like Kate Bradbury said, their defense is much improved from last year. So it's one of these things that I'm really looking – that's going to be one of the areas I'm really looking forward to seeing. But, it wasn't all – JB and the offensive line. Quinn Ewers, holy cow, 25 of 35, 325 yards, 1 touchdown. He did have an interception, which broke the snap, but that's okay. He also added 7 carries for 40 yards and 2 touchdowns. Quinn Ewers had the hell of a game. Nash, you kind of nailed the completion percentage for Quinn, and came closest, I think, on predicting the yards. You had him with.
I was dead on the yards. Yeah, I was money.
Yeah, you had
5 yards off
predicted
rushing, too.
350, hadn't you? No, you predicted 325 and 3 touchdowns with 20 of 28. So Quinn was hitting. It was a breakout game for Adonai Mitchell. Xavier Worthy was nearly over 100. There was the unfortunate loss of Jatavian Sanders. But this passing game seems to be finding its rhythm. I mean, there were some stumbles in the red zone, but when you combine the passing game with Jonathan Brooks, 600 plus yards carries, 600 total yards more than for this game. Is this the best you've seen the offense this year? Do you think it was just Kansas's defense, or are they really starting to find their rhythm? What do you think? Give me your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Kansas's defense, was very strong. I think they definitely wore down in the second half, especially in that fourth quarter. You could see they were just kind of done. But I was super impressed with the Texas offense. I think it probably was the best performance overall. I mean, 661 yards of offense with 0 punts. You're just moving the ball at will. They were doing it through the air. They were doing it on the ground. You talked about Adonai Mitchell, 10 catches, 141 yards. He is really developing chemistry with Quinn Ewers, because the throws that Quinn hits Mitchell on, they're all, pretty precise timing throws. Like, he hits him out of his cut. He hits him in stride. You can just see him gaining that trust with Adonai Mitchell, where at times last year it was like he felt like he had to force the ball to Xavier Worthy because that was the guy who could give him the big plays. That was the only guy he really trusted. And that connection wasn't always there, but you can tell he has a lot of trust in Adonai Mitchell right now. And Mitchell has been really crisp with his routes. He's good in the red zone. He's good after the catch. The offense overall was really good, man. I mean, it was weird during the game. It was like, this game is closer than it should be. Why is Texas letting him hang around again? On rewatch, I mean, the team played really, really solid football. Like, there was a couple fluky or / bad plays on defense, but overall the defense was awesome. The offense, they didn't punt, so can't really complain there. But I thought the team played really well overall, especially on offense.
You know what, Nash? I want to get your opinion about the defense in the second, but I got to point this out from Justin Gamboa, saying he's expecting a big game from Jonathan Brooks against OU. Obviously, Brooks had the monster game against Kansas, and we've been telling you guys for weeks and weeks and weeks, you need to jump on the Jonathan Brooks autographed jerseys from Elite Sports Memorabilia now, because the value is only going up. That kind of performance against Kansas will continue. And if you would like a Jonathan Brooks autographed jersey, it's as simple as scanning the QR code and going to Elite Sports Memorabilia and grabbing one of those babies. They are, well, Nash can tell you, they are a thing of beauty, aren't they? Look at that. You've got him hanging up alongside Jamal Charles and Ricky Williams. And that's high praise for Jonathan Brooks.
Yeah. Hey, look, I certainly knew when you're putting because it's not just that. You got Eric Metcalf up there. You got Roshan Johnson, Earl Campbell, Jamal. It's a lot of good running backs behind me. So to put Jade, but not Jade, but also Jade, but to put Jonathan Brooks up on there, there was a level of confidence that had to be had.
Nash, how many times does he have to go over 100 yards to get him framed? I mean, what are we doing here? It's probably time.
Well, I mean, right now I'm a little broke, so I'm waiting for money to come in. But once that happens, trust me. Well, and also here's the other deal. I'm a smart man. I'm waiting for a sale. I'm waiting for a buy one get one sale so I can just walk out with a bunch of frames.
There you go. And you know what? But it's not Just Brooks at Elite Sports Memorabilia. He's got just about everything you could possibly want, including Quinn Ewers, including the aforementioned Javian Sanders. Xavier Worthy is in the house. He's got, just a roster. Adonai Mitchell has signed. Malik Murphy, if you're looking ahead to the future, has signed. He's Jordan Whittington, J-Witt, fan favorite, Longhorn legend. I mean, he's going to be around. He's going to be associated with UT for the rest of his career. There's just all kinds of gear, jerseys, helmets, Funkos, whatever you want. Brandon at Elite Sports Memorabilia has got, and I promise you, you will not be disappointed. So please scan that QR code. Go check out their page on Facebook where they've got everything listed. It is worth your time. And hey, we're already in October. There you go.
Well, I also got that somewhere else, but he does have them. He does have them, and they're signed by much cooler people.
Look, we're already in October. Christmas is coming, folks. So get out your phone, scan that QR code, and go check them out. Nash, I did want to ask you about the defense. I mean, listen, Kansas came out running the ball pretty well. They started off with some pops. They were getting 10, 15, 20. In fact, their first play of the game was an explosive carry for, I want to say, almost 20 yards. And there was a little bit of concern there as I was watching. But here's the other tweet you sent out over the weekend that really struck me. Texas is adjusting its run defense very well. I mean, you run through it. It is a crazy defensive stat. Run through what you put out.
So, I mean, yeah, to say there's multiple sides that you can look at this. You can look at it as, hey, there's a huge positive as we're adjusting very well. Once you get to the third drive, it's consistent. You go like outside the first three drives, Rice, 20 attempts, 25 yards. Bama, 22 attempts, 34 yards. Wyoming, 32 attempts, 73 yards. Baylor, 23 attempts, 46 yards. 14 attempts, 15 yards for Kansas. So it's consistent across the board. And it's not one game propping up all the rest of the games. But at the end of the day, there's also the other side of the coin of, hey, can we just come out and start fast? But at the same time, there's also the token of teams are coming out and game planning us. They're hitting us and this is also a sign of being a very good team is when you have coaches every single week. It's because this is different than what we've experienced in the past few years. People have wanted to beat Texas all the time. This is different. Now they want to beat Texas, and they want to beat one of the best teams in the nation. And they understand that in order to beat one of the best teams in the nation, you have to go out there and you have to respect them, and you got to give them a game, almost like in Arkansas from 2021, where we prepared for something else, and you're giving us a completely different look.
Yeah, I think the big thing was in that first half, they got beat on some outside runs, a couple options, a couple of just normal outside runs, and then they made an adjustment. It didn't really happen as much in the second half.
Well, it's also fluky plays, like you said earlier.
Yeah, no, obviously the fumble Rooski, the touchdown was whatever. It was still a nice run before the fumble, but yeah, it was definitely a fluke touchdown. But they just made a good adjustment. That's what you want to see. The only real concerning play was the bomb over the top where Keaton Crawford just couldn't keep up with the wide receiver. But if you allow just one kind of legitimate big play like that, that's what you're looking for from the Texas defense, because we've said it so many times on this show, but it just continues to be true. It is hard to drive all the way down the field on 11, 12, 13 play drives on this Texas defense. I think that's going to be the same for Oklahoma as it was with Kansas. We haven't mentioned Jalen Daniels yet. This obviously is a big deal, but I think Texas still would have came out on top of this one anyway. But yeah, the defense was super impressive. The fact that, they did get beat a couple times and they made the adjustments didn't really happen in the second half. Kansas wore down. The Texas defense did not. So I don't think you can ask for much more from the Texas defense aside from just don't get beat over the top on those big plays consistently, because that's the only way teams are going to be able to hang points on you. They can't do it by slowly moving down the field. The defense is just too good for that.
Well, and honestly, it's a deal where, and sorry about Travis, I cut you off a little bit.
Go ahead.
This is a thing where Texas is actually not. It's not. We're not consistently letting up these deep plays.
No, yeah, I'm saying
I was just some people might think that, and The reality is PK, this also shows like he's shown an ability to adapt on the fly. He is typically a guy that he wants to throw free safeties back 30 yards down the field. And what you're seeing him, hey, we're going to commit to the run game. We're going to force you to stop the run. Or we're going to take the run away from you completely. And we're going to trust our defensive backs, and we're going to let them go play ball and let them cover and trust them. And you've seen it a couple times versus a Jaron Thompson where Jaron's gotten burned. You've seen that. But at the end of the day, there's only been 6 touchdowns scored on this Texas defense. And you can legitimately point to saying 3 to 4 of those either don't matter at all or they were just complete flukes, like the Kansas fumble and then go pick it up and go to the end zone. If y'all remember, there was a play where we had there was just like a big cluster, against Alabama, where one of the Niblack went and he just got free because a bunch of our guys took each other out. It almost like when you're playing this Texas defense, you're having to rely on these fluky plays, and that's not a successful way to go about football.
I mean, the thing is, PK is just such a savvy play caller. Like, if you give a savvy guy like that who can make adjustments, if you give him a defense that can stop the run with light to medium boxes, then that just opens up way too many options for him. He's going to be able to throw different looks at the quarterback. Like, it's like the 2021 Rams kind of, right? You've got Aaron Donald and you've got Sebastian Joseph Day in his prime. Like, you can run on them a little bit, but like you're running on them when they have light boxes. So you can't really run on Aaron Donald.
Sweat's a huge part of that, man.
Let me tell you,
he's the fifth highest defender in all of college football via PFF.
That's what I'm saying. You have Sweat, Murphy,
83 snaps.
Listen, guys.
You're not
listen, I love PK, but I can call defenses when I can stop the run and get pressure with my front 4. I mean, that's not genius level. That's talent level. And that's, listen, this was a fantastic game for Texas. They looked great. They were clicking. They were moving. But we do have some nitpicks here. There are still some warning signs here that I don't think can be ignored. First off, they missed their only 2 deep ball shots. I'm not going to go nuts about that, but they did miss them. It is still there. It is still an issue. The bigger issue for me is they left too many points on the field. I mean, 40 to 14 is great, but frankly, it should have been more closer to 55 to 14. They left a lot of points on the field by stalling out in the red zone. I mean, the kicking woes that was 2 missed field goals there. The red zone is the bigger deal to me. That's the one that is, if you're facing really good teams, that has got to be concerning. Sark was asked about it after the game, and he got a little testy. He was kind of like, well, stats can tell you anything. But he did acknowledge that there was work that needed to be done in the red zone. And the fact that he got testy about it, to me, further emphasizes it's an issue to him. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm misreading that. Maybe he was testy because they just threw up 600 yards against Kansas and 40 points. And he was like, what the hell? What else do I need to do? But I think he knows the red zone is an issue. And it may not be an issue against Kansas. It could be an issue down the road if they are in really tight games. And OU Texas is a rivalry game. You cannot, it's not inconceivable that it could be a tight game. Kansas State still has a good defense and a pretty good team. There's going to be the Big 12 championship game and then potentially the college football playoffs. On a scale of 1 to 10, each of you, give me how concerned you are about the red zone offense on a scale of 1 to 10. We'll start with you, Nash, then go to Aaron.
Probably about like a 6. And the only reason why I say go to 6 is because if you look at it, we're still 90.4% of the time we're a top 30 team as far as getting points on the board in the red zone. It's getting the touchdown, and I don't know. I think that there's a certain aspect of it could be vanilla play calling. We really haven't played an opponent that's really forced us to start reach deep in your bag, and I actually think you actually started to see more of that with like AD. And AD, man, I didn't get to say this earlier, man. Having him, that's huge because if we lost to Jatavian Sanders last year, or if we didn't have an AD losing JT, that's a much greater effect on this offense. But I don't know, man. When you have the red zone weapons that we have, Jonathan Brooks is 2 of those drop pass touchdowns. I don't see that happening consistently. I'm not that worried.
Aaron, scale of 1 to 10, quickly, how concerned are you?
Yeah, I'm probably at about a 5 for the red zone offense, and a decent chunk of that is just JT Sanders being injured right now because he is a huge red zone weapon because he allows you to use different formations down there, and he's such a good, pass catching option himself. We talk about it with Sark's offense quite often. His whole offense is predicated around space and creating space to open up the field. You can't do that as much in the red zone, so I think a Sark offense is always going to look better in space than it is in the red zone where it's compact. You're not going to score a touchdown 100% of the time against respectable teams. If you can get field goals, sometimes that's going to be okay, especially with this defense. There is room for improvement. You could still be more consistent in the running game down there, but Quinn using his legs helps a lot in the red zone. But I think I'm only at about a 5. I think the red zone offense kind of is what it is, but I would like to see, if Jatavian Sanders being out is not going to help things in the red zone. That's for sure. So I think that's probably where most of that concern stems from.
I will say this, coming into the season and through the first part of the season, I was also concerned about the third down conversion rates. They fixed that Saturday and then held Kansas, the number 1 team in the country at third down conversions, to 0 for 8 on thirds and 0 for 2 on fourth downs. And one final quick note, the chat chiming in, Texas fans are Texas fanning again. We win despite our faults. That's a skill. All right, I'll grant you that. It is a skill to be able to win even when you're not clicking. So he's only at a 4. Listen,
yeah,
it's time to put Kansas behind us. Kansas is Kansas, all right? And outside of 2021, and the end of the Charlie Strong era, which, maybe Texas fans should be thanking Kansas for that loss. I don't know. But outside of that, Kansas is not the rival when it comes to UT football. It's OU, and it is OU week. And we are going to be joined by Barry Trammell, formerly of the Oklahoman, now with selloutcrowd.com, coming up. But first, you're getting ready to go to Dallas. And if you're not, it's going to be a big game. And the one place to go to make sure you get everything you need for this weekend is Specs. They've got the fine wines. They've got the finest spirits. They've got fantastic food, all in one convenient location. It's a Texas born and bred company. There's probably a location near you. And I know there's locations in Dallas. So if you're heading up to Dallas, you can grab something while you're in town. If not, hit Specs online or the Specs app. Go check it out.
No matter what you're needing, Specs same-day delivery can save the day with our Specs app or online shopping. From world-class wines to hard-to-find spirits and craft beers to gourmet foods, delicious snacks, and spectacular sweets. It's Specs. Cheers to savings.
It is OU week. It is time. We're focusing on OU for the rest of the way out. Let's move past Kansas. Barry Trammell from selloutcrowd.com, formerly the Oklahoman, and the Total Dominance Hour on WWLS, the Sports Animal, joins us now. Barry, thank you so much for getting up and getting in the house with us.
Yeah, you guys are up at it early in the morning. That's pretty impressive.
I'm an old man, so the early morning's not a big deal for me. But these young guys, it is impressive that they get up.
Yeah, I don't do mornings.
Barry,
you're doing them okay so far.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And we thank you for getting up this morning, too, especially on this week. This is a big one. I wanted to get your first right off the bat. I want to get your impression on where the psyche is of OU coming into this week. Where do you think this team's head is at as they've gone through this early season schedule and now getting ready for Texas?
Well, I think they're very encouraged as a team. They suffered through what sort of a cataclysmic season last year, going 6-7. Came out of nowhere. They didn't see it coming. Lost a bunch of close games. Also got blown out a couple of times. Seemed like maybe some of you guys saw one of those games. And they're not accustomed to that. And it was a psychological blow and this wasn't the way it's supposed to go. Going into this season, the schedule was so easy, especially the early part. People like me kept telling them, you're not going to know anything until you get through Dallas. We still don't know a lot about them. They're 5-0, but the schedule's been soft. But at least they're 5-0. If you're going to play a soft schedule, win all those games, and they haven't really been pushed much. So I think they're encouraged, but they need to find out what they're all about. And in the old days, the residue from a year ago, pro or con, would change. These days, teams change so much because of the portal and whatnot that you can see teams be completely different from a year ago. So are the Sooners one of those teams? I think we start finding out Saturday.
Barry, if there's one unit, whether it's the passing game, the run defense, the pass defense, that you can try to take something away from, even though the competition hasn't been there, what do you think the unit is that they are feeling best about going into this game based on what they've seen in the first couple weeks here?
Well, I mean, the easy answer is the passing game. It's the closest thing to the sort of the Sooner standard of the last 25 years. The thing that has to get you most excited is the defense isn't leaking a bunch of stuff. They're not busting in the secondary. They're tackling really well, those kinds of things. That's not been the norm at OU, even in the glory days. The defense was not very good. So the defense has been pretty good. Now they haven't played what you would call prolific offenses yet. Iowa State, Cincinnati, SMU, that crowd is, not a murderer's row of offense. So it's untested, but they've been blitzed pretty good by untested offenses before. So I think they feel good about the defensive improvement. But Texas, of course, is the kind of team that can show you didn't really improve all that much. So, but they can throw it around. Dylan Gabriel's an excellent quarterback. He's probably not as good. Not probably. He's not as good as the three-man weave of Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts. But he's really good. So they know they can rely on the passing game. They need to run it better. Haven't been running it very well. And then against Texas, they'll find out about that defense.
Yeah, the run game was what I was going to ask you about next. It's the one area when I watched the Sooners, they really seem to be struggling. I mean, the stats are okay, but I think they're a little better than what the eye tells us that run game is. And when I watched Cincinnati game, they're the only team so far that has a defensive line even close to what Texas has with Dante Corleone. They had some real good players up front, and they were able to hold the Sooners to 20. Is that a fair comp for what to expect against Texas, or do you think was something else going on in Cincinnati that maybe stymied the offense a little more, or was it self-reflective? What did you see coming out of that game?
Well, I did see Cincinnati, sort of, I don't know if they controlled the line of scrimmage, but they certainly shut down the running game. They turned back the Sooners from scoring quite a bit. Some of that was self-inflicted wounds, but a lot of it was just a good defense holding its own against Oklahoma. So I would agree that Cincinnati's defense, let me think real fast. I think Cincinnati's defense would be the best unit they've played. 5 games, 5 offenses, 5 defenses, 10 units. The Cincinnati defense is probably the best thing they've seen. And Cincinnati held up really well. So I do think it's a concern. But anytime in Norman where there's offensive problems, they don't really get too worked up about it because they generally figure those things out. It's that defense that really sets off alarms. And so far, those alarms have not been set off. Now, by the second quarter in Dallas, we may have every fire truck in Oklahoma headed to the Cotton Bowl to put out the fire. But so far, there's not a big reason. Dylan Gabriel's been delivering the deep ball really well. So to me, the key to this game is can they figure out how to run it? So far against those 5 teams, the answer is no. Now, Sooners historically have come to the Cotton Bowl and ran it fairly well. Even when they weren't a good running team, they come up with some wrinkles. Quentin Griffin's draw in 2002, those kinds of things. I don't know if they've been holding stuff back. I probably would have unlocked the playbook a little bit when SMU was hanging with them, or when Cincinnati was hanging with them. But maybe they've got new wrinkles. We'll see. Wrinkles only get you so far. Sometimes you just have to block the other guy, and that's in the running game. They haven't been doing a lot of that. They haven't really found a tailback they've used 4 and different combinations, and they're all pretty good players, but nobody really has stood out. So that's the key to the game, is can they run on Texas? I don't mean 300 yards, but can you run for 150 yards on Texas? If you can, you got a decent chance of winning. If you can't, you got a little chance of winning. So to me, the game sort of comes down to that.
Yeah, to me, honestly, that's it. To me, for the game, offensively and defensively, it hinges on the run game. And I wanted to ask you, how's Oklahoma's rush defense looking? Because you obviously, when you got a guy like Jonathan Brooks, who's just as hot as any running back is in the nation, obviously the defensive coordinator or Brent Venables, he's going to try and sit there and take away the run. How's y'all's run? What's y'all's run front looking like?
Well, it's been pretty good. The Venables has restocked the defensive line with some transfers. They still don't have an elite defensive tackle. They don't have a nose guard that makes everybody head to the edges. So this is not, they don't have Leroy Selman or Gerald McCoy in there. And so they gotta sort of collectively do it. Nobody's dinged them too much on the run game. But again, they haven't really faced a team that physically imposes their will on people. So Texas will be the first squad capable of that. So it's untested, I would say. That's the part of the defense. The linebackers have been playing pretty good, which was not really expected. Secondary's I think they got 10 interceptions in 5 games. So the secondary's been ball hawking pretty well, and they've gotten after the pass rusher pretty good. But I don't know that's the one place they've been tested, is just standing in there and trying to man up against a team that's just coming at you and seeing what you can do.
Yeah, definitely. Those defensive backs are legit.
So, Barry, I did want to ask you, this obviously Dylan Gabriel's had a hell of a season. He's passed for more than 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But it seems like a lot of that is the short to intermediate passing game, which very similar to Quinn Ewers in that aspect. How's the deep ball? If there's one area that Texas has been susceptible in the pass defense, it's with a deep ball here and there. Is the OU deep game consistent enough to take advantage of that? How is the passing game with Dylan Gabriel and the deep ball?
Well, that's been the best part of the offense, in my opinion, especially the last 2 weeks. Cincinnati and Iowa State. He's really. I actually chart the games by length of pass and whatnot, and do a report card. I've given him an A on the deep ball the last 2 weeks. I think in deep balls, he was 4 or 5, which is a kooky percentage against Iowa State. I think that's the best part of it. Now, they don't have a first-round draft pick at wide receiver. They don't have CD Lamb, that kind of player. But they've got a couple of guys that can get behind you. And Gabriel's gotten them the ball, gotten drawn 3 or 4 pass interference penalties on the 40-yard throws. So they've done a nice job in that regard. That was a flaw in the 22 OU offense. Gabriel was not great on the deep balls a year ago, but that seems to have improved. It's easier to throw a deep ball against people you can get behind. You can't get behind the Texas defense quite as well. So that's, again, the whole dang team's untested. That's just the way it is in a lot of college football scheduling. If Sooners were supposed to play Georgia, I think it was the Horns went to Tuscaloosa, and the SEC scrapped that game because it was the first of a 2-game series. Texas Alabama was the back end of a 2-game series, so the SEC says, "Hey, knock yourself out." Oklahoma was not going to be able to return the game to Georgia as a non-conference game, so that game got scrapped. SMU comes to town, nice team, not Georgia. So we don't know. We really don't know. And it'd be nice if everybody played teams that were capable of beating them, but that's not the way the world works. So we'll see about the Sooners. They can the deep ball by Gabriel. The key is if you give him time, he can get it out there. And so far they have. They've passed block really well. Run block, not so much, but they've protected Gabriel pretty good. And he's got some speedsters. Andrell Anthony's a transfer from Michigan who's been very good. Jalil Farouk is a veteran who's done a nice job. So they got a freshman he might have played enough last year to be a sophomore this year. I can't remember, but Jaden Gibson's a big, tall kid. Reminds you of C.D. Lamb in his physical makeup. He's certainly not C.D. Lamb as a ball player, but he's made some really nice catches. Catches the ball with his hands, which is a novel concept for a receiver. So we'll see. We'll see if those guys can do it on the big stage. But so far, that's one of the better things about this team.
Barry, I was going to ask you about that Oklahoma offensive line, because if Oklahoma has been inconsistent in the run game and Texas has been pretty stout against the run with a very good front seven, if Oklahoma is forced into obvious passing situations and kind of that kind of game script, you said that the pass protection has been strong this year. Is there a specific part or a couple guys on the offensive line, whether it's the tackles or the guards, that have been the real strength? Is there a weak point that maybe you'd be concerned about against like really good interior defenders for Texas? What is your overall evaluation of the guys who are on the line and the status of the line overall?
Well, it looks like 4 of the 5 guys have held up pretty good. They got a transfer from Stanford, Walter Rouse, who's a really good player. McTwire's a veteran. Jonathan Rahm is Jonathan Rahm. He actually is needed over in Rome, winning the Ryder Cup. Andrew Rahm is the center, doing a nice job. But they've got a young guy, Savion Byrd, was playing guard, wasn't real consistent. Last game or two, Trey Everett from one of the MAC schools, a transfer, has stepped in and has done a pretty nice job. But I think it's the right guard is really the sort of the perhaps the weak point in that 4-man unit. They've liked 4 of the 5 guys, but that 5th guy is they've sort of been struggled with. So that is a thing to look at Saturday is and I think it'll be Everett again, because I think he's played better than Byrd. And so I think that's a key to the game also is can Everett, playing a MAC schedule. He'll be pretty wide-eyed. The Cotton Bowl, there's probably more people at the Cotton Bowl on Saturday than a MAC team sees in a full season. So that's a good one. Offensive line's been good. Bill Bedenbaugh's a longtime offensive coach, knows what he's doing. Offensive line coach knows what he's doing. Yeah. But he's got to shore up that one position, I think.
And forgive me, what one position is that? I
think it's right guard. I think it's guard. I think it's right guard is where Bird's been playing.
I mean, that's what you want, honestly. But I know it sounds weird, but Texas, we fixed up our edges. That was one major concern going into the year, and yeah, tackle's not a position that you want to be needing a guy.
Walter Rouse has really helped him. He was a Stanford graduate transfer who had committed to Nebraska in the portal, and they flipped him, and he's done a wonderful job. Just as a matter of history, his grandfather is the guy who made the winning basket at the buzzer for Loyola Chicago in the 1963 NCAA championship game.
Oh wow!
What a stat there! That's a cool stat.
So the Sooner Final Four team with Buddy Hield several years ago had Kadeem Lattin playing center. His dad was on that team. Was on the Texas Western team of Don Haskins in '66. For the 1960s for the 1960s NCAA basketball history, Sooners have you covered.
And you know what? That was a pretty smart move from Walter Rouse, not going to Nebraska this year and picking OU instead. But I guess you would expect that from a Stanford grad, wouldn't you? They tend to make pretty good decisions in life.
Yeah, so far, yeah. When he jumps off, when he has a false start, we look at each other and say, "What's a Stanford degree worth these days?" I don't know.
Hey, we got a Stanford guy too. He's been doing pretty well for us.
Ryan Sanborn, the punter, has had a very good year so far.
Absolutely.
Barry, Hey, I'm not necessarily asking you to pick the game. You can if you want to, but the opening line is 5 points in favor of Texas. But the ESPN analytics has it 54-45 in favor of OU. Which would you be more inclined to go with right now on Monday morning if you were kind of looking at that?
Well, I've been looking at that ESPN analytics all year. You know, they got OU number 2 in the All-State playoff predictor. I've sat there and put on my thinking cap for hours and hours, and I still come away saying that's nuts. So I don't like that at all. I also don't pay any attention to the lines. Just what Vegas thinks of the American football bettor's mind is completely irrelevant to me. I will say this. I always, in OU Texas, I always pick whoever won the year before. And you guys know as well as I do, this is a series of streaks. This is a series where one school seems to dominate the other. 3 in a row, 5 out of 6, 8 out of 10, a decade of this is a series where one school dominates a decade or so, and then eventually it switches and the other team starts dominating. I've thought long and hard why that is. The best thing I've come up with is this is a no excuses rivalry. When Michigan goes to Ohio State and loses, they don't say this, nobody says this, but on the way home back to Ann Arbor, you think in your mind, we were playing in the horseshoe. We weren't supposed to win. Home team's supposed to win. Those kinds of things. OU Texas, there's no excuses. I mean, it's 50-50 in the stands. It's 200 miles from each campus. Heck, even more, they're in the same conference. So, you don't have some sort of officiating argument. So, in your heart of hearts, if you lost, you deserve to lose. And I think that gives a psychological edge to the team that won. Hey, we won this the right way. We won this in every deserving fashion. And I think that fortifies confidence. What I don't know is in the portal era, teams change so much from year to year. I think what Brent said the other day, I think they got 19 or 20 players left from the Lincoln Riley era. That was only 2 years ago. That was like 21 months ago. So teams change so much. Does that psychological edge or psychological disadvantage play out in OU Texas these days? I don't know. We'll have to look at the next decade to find out. I still think there's a lot of to be said for my theory. So I always pick who won the year before. I don't know if it's a situation where OU's been dominating Texas. 49-0 is a good way to start a new era. If there's hangover from that, there probably is on some level. Then I think good advantage psychologically for Texas. Plus the Longhorns are much more proven than Oklahoma. If you want to just talk football, I mean, you go to Tuscaloosa and win, and there's no bad thing you can say about the Texas football fortunes of 2023. You go to Tuscaloosa, win, you've earned your stripes. So to me, Texas is the clear favorite, and that's who I would pick to win this game.
That's an excellent point, by the way, about that you're right. This is a series of streaks, and your reasoning behind it is solid. I was going to say it might have something to do with the fact that these two are battling it out for the same recruits year in and year out. And if one starts to get on a roll, then, the domino effect certainly probably kicks in. But in the age of the portal, that's minimized all the way around. So it'll be interesting to see it play out this week and going forward. Hey, if Texas and OU end up in the Big 12 championship game, can we count on you to come back and visit us again that week?
Well, I'd like to say no, but the truth is I didn't really get up early. For you guys, I get up early every day, so I'm rip-roaring to go. So sure, we'll do it again.
Barry, thank you so much, and thank you for joining us today. That was an excellent breakdown of OU.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Have a great day. That really was awesome. I was psyched to have him. And by the way, guys, we're not done with OU. Obviously, it's OU week. We're going to be going all week long. We've already got, in fact, sneak peek coming up on Wednesday for our scouting report, our weekly scouting report. We've got Toby Rowland, the voice of the OU Sooners, coming on to join us Wednesday. I'm excited about that. And we might have another guest or two coming up maybe on Friday. I don't know. I'm working on that. We'll see. So thank you guys so much for stick around because there's going to be a lot of good OU talk this week. What'd you guys take away from that, Aaron?
Yeah, no, I thought it was a great interview. A lot of really good stuff from Barry. A lot of people hanging out right now. Drop a like real quick. It is OU week. We need all the likes we can get to get the good vibes going. The right guard stuff was interesting. I mean, every guest we have, I'm going to ask about the guard situation because of T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. Like, I just feel like that's really important to know about because if that is a possible question mark. But, I mean, the fact that they feel pretty good about 4 of the 5 other spots, that's pretty important as well. So, he's pretty, shaky on the Oklahoma running game. So I'm starting to think this, like, it's going to be in the hands of Dillon Gabriel 100%, like almost certainly in the hands of Dillon Gabriel, because I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball very well on Texas. So they're going to have to move the ball through the air. They're going to have to pass protect. So I think that was some of the interesting things that I took away from that one.
Nash, what's interesting about that, Nash, is that Texas didn't get any sacks against Kansas. I believe that's the first time this year they've not been able to get to the quarterback, and maybe some of that had to do with Jason Bean. I mean, he's one of the fastest players on the Jayhawks team. I don't know, but it's not like they haven't faced good running quarterbacks before, like Jalen Milroe in Alabama. But the fact that the OU line has been holding up against defenses, they've done well in pass blocking situations. Nash, do you think Texas is going to be able to get through that and penetrate and get a sack or two, or is OU going to be able to hold up? What do you think is going to happen?
Man, here's the deal. I think that it really comes down to Oklahoma. They're going to have to pound the ball. They're going to have to get the rock moving. And this is like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm not really too worried about the sacks just because I think that, like Aaron said, like it's a tough task running on this Texas defense. And you look at the stat that we showed earlier, like once this team figures out what your game plan is, they're pretty good at stopping it. And it's just, this is not you want to be able to control the time of possession. Something that really stood out to me that he was talking about was they got like 25 new guys. I've always said, like, look, a guy like A.D. Mitchell, this is his first time playing too. So these dudes, this is truly a completely new game, away game. Like, everything's brand new. For the guys that have been here, like a Jade Barron, or even a guy that's only been here for 2 years, a Kelvin Banks. Once you've seen it, you know what to expect. You've been on the bus you've been on the bus pulled into the fairgrounds before. You go into the same locker room that you went down. You're going to the same tunnel. The fans are on the same sides. Everything is the same. It's just a different color jersey. So that's why, like, it's a really special game. But man, it's just like that's a lot of new bodies to be walking into an unknown environment with, and you're going to need to be able to control the clock against Texas, and you're going to need to be able to run the ball. And it's just like in years past, you've been able to point to, okay, well, they got a Brooks, they got a Anderson, they got a Mixon, right? It's just back after back after back after back. You could actually point, like there was a point in time where you were like, hey, that's running back you. And they just, it's when you hear them say like, hey, there's like there's 4 guys and we're trying to find one. You want to have found your guy before you're going in Texas.
Let me tell you guys, I'm a little older than you boys. It comes down to the running game damn near every single year. That's the turning point on every year when these two teams play. It's whoever runs the ball better wins the game, year in, year out. And in that aspect, you gotta love, despite Colby's fear about the deep ball, and I understand that it is the weakest part of the defense. I agree. They've given up a few, 1 or 2 here and there, but it hasn't been a consistent concern. So The run game is where it all happens. And frankly, this is a sneak peek of what our Thursday when we start doing our picks. I've watched this OU run game several times now. I've watched several of OU's games. They're not very good at running the ball. The stats look okay, but even those are better than what they've done. And I brought that up with Barry. They have struggled to run the ball, and it's not like they've been playing top-tier defenses outside of Cincinnati. And Cincinnati shut them down completely and held them to 20 points. 20 points is not going to be good enough to win this game. If Texas's defense replicates that and holds OU to 20, it's a ball game. So I don't know.
I brought up Colby's comment just to relate it to the run game, saying the OU's deep ball is the strength of their team, and it is the weakness of the Texas defense. Not that it's not that the Texas defense is awful with the deep balls, but it is probably the weakest part of what is a strong defense. But if you like we've been saying, like if OU can't run the ball and Texas can stop the run with medium to light boxes, that allows them to devote extra men to taking away the deep balls, which PK will be looking to do, knowing that if Oklahoma can't run the ball, like it's just going to be hard to sustain those drives. The Texas defenders, they're going to have a splash play. Eventually, they're going to force a holding. They're going to get a sack. They're going to get an interception. So I just wanted to bring that up and relate it to say how important the running game for Oklahoma is to all of it. Because if they're not able to establish a run, even if they've been able to hit these deep balls against some of these other teams, PK and this Texas defense isn't going to allow it if they don't have to respect the run with a lot of bodies in the box.
Absolutely.
Well, here's the other deal is too. Texas is I think it needs to be reiterated. When Aaron's saying that, he's not saying the pass defense is bad. Like this is in my lifetime, 20 plus years, this is one of the best Texas Longhorn defenses that I'll have gotten to watch. And I feel like I can confidently say that. You look at it, we force opponents to throw interceptions 3.87% of the time. That's 28th in the country. We're a top 30 team when we're talking about limiting long passes, so not allowing these deep balls. I need to watch more, but I feel like I've seen a little bit of Gabriel. I feel like the longer you go on the throws for him, the more you start to see some of those under throws. And I'll tell you right now, as a guy that the few deep balls that we've seen completed on Texas, they've been burned. Hey, underthrow that ball, please.
Yeah,
please,
okay.
Underthrow it.
You know what? I will say, I wanted to wrap up with this. I had in the rundown that we were going to review our picks from last week. But I think the more interesting question that I want to hear from you guys quickly, because we're running out of time, but Texas is ranked number 3 in the polls. A lot of chatter out there after Georgia struggled this week. Should Texas be, and Michigan has not played anybody. Where would you, if you two were picking, doing a top 25 ballot, where would you have Texas ranked? Nash, we'll start with you and then go to Aaron.
I'd have Texas ranked at number 2 behind Michigan.
Behind Michigan? You've got Michigan as the best team in the country.
I think it's a combination of Georgia. Georgia would be number 1 still, but they've struggled in games. Michigan hasn't struggled the same way. They've had some. I don't know. It's one of those things that they're going to have it taken away from them before. Either that or continue to look bad like a Georgia. Not to say that Georgia's look bad, but for a top 5 team, not just looking like this dominant number 1 force. And also, I mean, the win after Oklahoma, if we win Oklahoma, it's a massive that changes a lot.
Yeah, we're still in the AP poll phase right now. We haven't gotten the college football playoff committee rankings yet. So because of that, I really don't have an issue with the rankings as they are right now with Georgia, Michigan, and then Texas. I would have Michigan and Georgia flipped. I've been more impressed with Michigan. I think Michigan's looked really good. I think J.J. McCarthy's a very good quarterback. I would have Michigan at 1. And then, Onwar makes this point all the time. It's a really good point. Texas has the most impressive win. They've beaten 2 ranked teams now. They've won all their games by double digits. I would have no issue with Texas being at 1, but I mean, this is just kind of how it works. Georgia hasn't lost many games over the past 2 or 3 years. They are the reigning national champions. They're undefeated right now. Michigan's been solid. I would probably have Michigan at 1 and then Georgia, Texas 2, 3. But I think once the college football playoff rankings start to come out, and that's when they have to factor in this season. Like, they can't just go based on reputation and what happened in previous years. I think that's when you can start to nitpick a little bit more. But right now, we're talking AP poll. I don't really have a huge issue with it. And I think we could see Texas jump up a little bit after a win against Oklahoma.
You know,
we're 4 weeks away from that too, by the way.
I do the Gailey poll in my column each week. So I'm my own poll, which stands for absolutely nothing and nobody cares about, but I have fun doing it. So that's the reason I asked. I'm debating in my head, but I think a case can be made for Georgia. I think a case can definitely be made for Texas. They have the best resume of any other team.
Yep.
But also, nobody's talking to Washington. To me, looks like the best team in the country. They haven't had a tough schedule yet. That changes not this week, but they've got a bye week this week. Then they play Oregon the week after. So their schedule really kicks in. We're going to find out real quick about Washington and how good they are. But when I watch them, that's a complete offense. Michael Penix Jr. looks incredible. And, of course, Texas saw Washington up close and personal in the Alamo Bowl. That was a tough game. I think Texas started to figure them out in the second half. I think with a little more time.
Well, actually, and honestly, that's really
ratings are, come on. Thank you. Too broke, but
that's actually really layered because defensively Penix was horrible versus Texas in the first half. Like lower than 50% completion percentage. Horrible. It was bad.
But Quinn was pretty bad in the first half too.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's like it's layered. You had the defense was playing bad in the first half, and then the offense they said let's switch sides. But honestly, and I did a poll recently. I just flipped Michigan and Washington this week.
Yeah, there you go. Well, all that to say, we've got a long way to go to talk about top 25. But again, this week it's Texas OU. There's plenty of time to talk about the rest of it. It's all about the Sooners this week. Hey, if you enjoyed the show and if you didn't enjoy the Barry Trammell interview, I don't know what to do for you. But hit that like button. Actually, if you want to give Texas a little extra mojo for this week's game, hit it right now. Give them that little extra juice and the energy into the atmosphere. That's, it's science that hitting the like button in favor of on a Texas Longhorn centric show actually translates to another point per game. So
yeah, I don't believe in jinxes or any sort of outside factors like that, except for hitting the like button. That is the one exception. I don't know why that would be the one exception. That just
because it's science and it's you can prove it statistically. So if you want to actually give the Longhorns an extra point on Saturday, you need to hit the like button. And by the way, subscribe to the channel. I already told you we've got Toby Rowland, the voice of the Sooners, coming up later this week. If you hit that bell notification, you will be notified when we go on air. But also, we've got a hell of a lot of great shows coming up this week, starting today, all day long on the OB Live channel. But you can, if you subscribe, you can see it all. We've got Anwar's old-fashioned sports talk show coming up. He's going to be talking Texas because he had a column yesterday where he was saying Texas should be number 1 in the country and laying out all the reasons why. And there's a lot of legitimate reasons for making the case that Texas is the number 1 team in the country. So I bet you're going to hear a thing or two about that coming up on Anwar's old-fashioned sports show. Hey, it's Jeff Ketchum's and Chad Hastings on the House Divided show coming up later. A&M had a good week this week. They're going to be creeping up in the top 25 polls. If they continue playing the way they're playing. We've got Football with Friends with Alex Dunlap, breaking down, one of the best analytical minds out there, breaking down the game against Kansas, probably looking ahead to OU. And finally, OB Outsiders tonight, Chance Mock and the boys. Chance Mock knows it. Look, Chance actually knows what it's like to run down the tunnel at the Cotton Bowl. And to me, that would be like a pinnacle of a sporting event. If I were a good enough player to have played in this game and to go down that tunnel, In fact, there used to be a guy on Orange Bloods, and I haven't seen this in a long time. He used to post. He played back in the day. He used to post about what it was like to go through that tunnel. He had a long column he would post every year. It gives you goosebumps just reading about it. I can't even fathom having done that, but Chance Mock has done that. So check out OB Outsiders tonight as well.
It's only Texas players too. Oklahoma players, they only get to run in, and then they only get to hear their fans. They don't hear the
That's right.
They don't hear the boos and then the cheers. It's a unique experience for Texas players.
It really is. OU sticks to their side, but Texas goes all the way down, and they get to hear both sides of the stadium. It's a unique game. There's really nothing else quite like this game, which to me is why it's number one in the rivalry rankings. I put it above the Michigan OSU game. Number two for me personally is Army Navy, but this is a unique game. There's nothing like it. We're going to be talking OU all week, so be sure to join us tomorrow. We're going to have another great show. We're going to be talking about what OU and Texas will look like in the SEC because it's SEC Tuesday. We're going to have our chat with Chris Gordy. So stick around for throughout the day today and join us again tomorrow. For Nash, who loves talking Texas, and for Aaron, Orange Blood Zone, it had some baseball scoops over the weekend, including talking about commitments. I'm Travis Gailey. Hope you have a great week. Have a great rest of your Monday. See ya.